Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Carmine's Arena, a cultural gourmet of information, if you will, a feast for your mind and soul. And now, without further delay, the man, the myth, the maestro, Carmine Arena.
Greetings and welcome once again to Carmine's Arena, site of contest and conflict, venue for and of resolution. Resolution in terms of focus, remedy, and commitment, both yours and mine, to the preservation, the propagation, and indeed the celebration of Western civilization. While considering the 9 Muses, daughters of Zeus, it struck me that the arts require perspectives that are not imposed as with male-dominated cultures, but reign free of alpha male mandate. Erato, the female muse of poetry, represents literary expression versified for special intensity, via distinctive style, rhythm, and pace, from its birthplace to the marketplace. Erato, along with her sister muses, are the living archive who midwife the arts, whose very source remains a much-argued mystery having to do with creation, creature, and creed. Choose wisely from among said trinity, or your poor endeavors gain a proper pallor, and so wither, duly cleansed from aesthetics ever guarded by its antiseptic magic. For poetry is language scented by its very own gravity, gravitas, and whimsy. Each reread supersedes its antecedes unto her meaning's sublimity. Great artists of any blush share a similar commonality, and that is their singularity, such a one as the American abstract expressionist Jackson Pollock, whose headstone at his grave in Long Island reads as follows: "Artists and poets, the raw nerve ends of humanity. By themselves, they can do little to save humanity. Without them, there would be little worth saving." Ah, yes, this epitaph is clearly a last word, well pondering. Without a creative spirit, mankind is damned. Minus a creative spirit, we are caged by our very own tyrant of ignorance, nourished by habitual error, languor, stupor, and all things unlooked for, such as liberator or educator and or protector, perhaps one's own very own self-confessor. With his drip paintings, Pollock used the very accidents of the paint medium you'll find all over an artist's studio, setting out to find the root, to take the drips to ever new and construed alignments. The art critic analyzes by decoding them, decoding the drips and their progress. We, on the other hand, merely sit back before the canvas to reflect on the irony of his persona, a combination of accident and resilient resolution, sub rosa. Thereafter, the accidents hold to a quota that bring present-day Pollock's countless greenback owners rolling in clover. Immediate understanding becomes no more a requirement here in painting's abstractions than it does in Emily Dickin's verse, nor Charles Ives in music notation. Art is multidirectional, adumbral, and epical, at once personal and universal, as with a cathedral. Let us now turn our attention back to an earlier seminal figure, William Blake, who was an English poet, painter, and printmaker, largely unrecognized during his lifetime. However, today Blake is now considered an important figure in the history of the poetry and visual arts of the Romantic Age. Born in 1757 in London, England, Blake began writing at an early age and claimed to have had his first vision of a tree full of angels at the age of 10. He studied engraving and grew to love Gothic art, which he incorporated into his own unique works. A misunderstood poet, artist, and visionary much of his life, he has been vastly influential since his death in 1827, the very year of the demise of his elder contemporary Beethoven, who perished at a younger age. I am thankful for their lives and our ever-enhanced heritage, a heritage which yet study, knowing full well that our interpretations will never be greater in performance than it first was in composition. As for Blake, although he only once traveled, no further than a day's walk outside of London, over the course of his life, his creative vision engendered a diverse and symbolically rich corpus, which embraced imagination as the body of God or human existence itself. Deeply religious, Blake nonetheless did not favor organized religion, favoring instead a sensuous life. He himself said, and I quote, "You never know what is enough unless you know what is more than enough." To come to know what is enough is the glory of Christianity, which conquers by forgiveness both the self and others when it comes to forgiveness. I personally have long made it a sacred habit to remember not only those I meant to hurt, but the many I hurt unknowingly. The latter is a haunting conception, well nigh impossible of total perception. Humility is its only stability. In Blake's masterpiece, Auguries of Innocence, the first 4 lines make up the poem behind the poem's 128 lines. And I quote, "To see the world in a grain of sand, and a heaven in a wild flower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour." The richness of these ideas is that any little thing in the world contains some sort of greater cosmic truth if you can look at it with enough energy and imagination. A wild flower is a miniature heaven. A grain of sand is a miniature world. And every person and other living thing in Blake's view is a miniature of the divine human or human form divine, which he identified with Jesus. Nearly all the metaphors Blake uses in the rest of the poem tend to be like worlds hidden in grains of sand. A robin in a cage is an example of freedom being crushed by tyranny in a universal way. There are many other such metaphors and profound thoughts given and taken by Blake from these wisely chosen poetic tropes, using words in other than their literal sense. In short, the poem Auguries of Innocence as a whole is a masterpiece that reflects Blake as one of the foremost poets. The poem is a long assemblage of conflicted situation laden with warnings and omens of judgment. Lines from the poem were set to music in 1965 by Benjamin Britten. Agatha Christie's novel, Endless Night, was inspired by this poem. And so it's become that Blake shall always and for all time be moments in culture's tomorrows. Art, Blake made clear, is the very tree of life, whereas science is the tree of death. Were he today to defend his claim, he undoubtedly would point to such materialist endeavors as cloning, or the deadly horror of thalidomide babies and the mechanics of warfare. Science possesses the swiftness and wickedness, the swiftness of wickedness. Just about Blake now. Most famous and popular poem is The Tiger, spelled Tyger. Perhaps in this poem is revealed the importance of questions as opposed to answers, for here we have 13 question marks and only one period. Listen and imagine. In The Tiger, God is perceived as a blacksmith. Each of the 6 stanzas but one contains a reference to the hand, whose opposable thumb can alone cause symmetry. Either a tiger's or a lamb's. The lamb in this reference is, of course, Christ, shaped by the Father and surrendered to sacrifice as man's Redeemer. I can only guess that the poem's 13 stanzas in numerology stand for 1 as God alone and 3 for the Trinity. In this system, all odd numbers are divine and even numbers temporal. Let's listen now to Tiger. Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forest of the night, what immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? In what distant deeps or skies burnt the fire of thine eyes? On what wings dare he aspire? What the hand dare seize the fire? And what shoulder and what art could twist the sinew of thy heart? And when thy heart began to beat, what dread hand and what dread feet? What the hammer, what dread grasp, there its deadly terror clasp? When the stars threw down their spears and warded heaven with their tears, did he smile his work to see? Did he who made the Lamb make thee? Tiger, tiger burning bright in the forest of the night, What immortal hand or eye dare frame thy fearful symmetry? Putting aside Blake's poetry may only be alleviated by your poetic focus on his paintings and engravings, which require an excellent lens to even begin to study, let alone interpret. These peerless achievements, it must be made clear, as against easy generalities, have nothing whatsoever to do with his contemporaries, as with romantic artists Turner and or Constable. Blake is utterly mystical and singular, in and of focus, more in keeping, most certainly, with John Milton, whom Blake admired greatly. But all comparisons strain against Blake's congenitally pure imaginings, which bear his DNA alone, from breastbone to headstone. In fact, Blake maintained that energy is the only life and is from the body, and reason is the bound or outward circumference of energy. Things that affect us deeply, very deeply, come without expiration dates. Their explication oftentimes requires a respectful silence until one makes ready to reach for poetry, either in prose or verse, thus to immerse and traverse, then to reimburse before one may disperse the throes that scatter among tomorrow's lingering sorrows. For yours truly one such time was 9/11's terror crime, which took me 12 months before I could wage my rage, committed to the written page, to upstage the carnage, and to hold its meaning in mastermind bondage. Bear with me for a one-day portion of my prose poem, cautions sans contortions, nor distortions to disarray emotions. Now to the World Trade Center, and I quote, "Paired sentinels of fanfared horizons, on twin heights the sun-leavened ore there. Does your absence haunt an astronomy, dual jets eclipsed in midair? Gone those nightly side-windowed galaxies, atop constellation New York, New York, vaunting its storied riches, writing out faulty properties of thought. Else, how dared our planet's capital, long overdue stalk due hawk, renew this clued venue to skew what we ought? Never ever was error zero more grounded, severed from heroes new-founded, rebounding against terror-carved hounders. Yet, where towers sheared, pitted with tears, we zero near to toe a cued walk, and from the rear endeavor to ditto our gawk at Manhattan, attritted catafalque, by dint of catapult sulks, cocked a bulk, to wing amuck as they struck a shock, struck. Overseas, in Araby, honeyed land of ghoulish glee and Judas tree, there be jubilee to toast our catastrophe in sandy Jabberwocky, while guile's vile ilk, who defiles this post of liberty, milks advocacy to remind us that where its combined boast of democracy, double westernmost coast which enile its legacies, Thus, to profile pedigree of endorsees statewide whoopee, otherwise paid for view weepy, would be blind spot's felony, freedom's infamy a sulk, their roasted host gonna scoop for all the wrong innermost trophies. Shucks, such ill luck. Would we could chuck these chuck-a-block strophes, but ghost towers apostrophes beg me seed not. They ask that you tuck in your chin and follow the dots. Day 1 p.m. How does the wind embrace emptiness, where once chanced the chase for daydreams? How then the wind retrace eagerness, where youth breathed the breath of brave schemes? Might wind for the nonce of godlessness whisper, when posted to moonbeams hummed morning's unanswered prayer. Excuse me. Our mourned centuries, by unspared turn, numbly unpaired. Alas, this mad canvas has still to amass the cloud-born, earth-shorn, chalked eyes on horizons impaired. These our proud-born, free-sworn, inside snares thrice beflared, stormed far below some car bombs ago, here now twice blitzed upstairs. With a brace more to go towards September's tetrad templates to hardware, errors, heirs, and confrères to beware in warfare, foes to oppose who chose unbent swords, reformed from befriending plowshares. Our rewards for conceits which extend charity to vice, seeking retreat in morality's timeshares. Laissez-passer, our winding sheet, carelessly threadbare, positions adjusted by the short hairs, as death, cheated of autumnal colors, arrives, a contrived effigy by replications diminished, while life plays a part apart from its arts, each brief muse the soul of pushcarts, which trade grease, the wheels of false starts, their synergy, our energy replenished. Before I close, I wish to leave you with the lyrical bond that poetry shares with song. This bond was beautifully reflected by Blake, who had a gifted ear and would set his poetry to music. He'd compose and perform with great skill. Yes, as you've heard me say many times, of all the arts, music shapes the shadows and shade of the invisible. Till next time, my friends, let us pledge ourselves to remain sonically irreducible, at one with harmonic beauty and the beauty of personal behavior, in a superior interior, sans ambiguity, but congruity in excelsior. Ciao, my friends.
If you have any comments or other remarks, and that I perhaps could even read on some of these broadcasts, please do not hesitate to write to me, Carmine Arena, P.O. Box 1029, Larchmont, New York 10538.